By far one of my favorite typo negative songs of all time. One of their best that they ever had done. And to tell you the truth, at first when I first heard that, it didn't even sound like them. What's up? You're hanging with the Beast, and we're talking today all things typo negative, which is one of my favorite subjects of all time because it's one of my favorite bands of all time. And oh man, it was a delay doing this episode. Life gets in the way, like everything else, man. So, well, apologies. And I had a lot of time to think about what I was going to say during this episode because, what do you say about one of your favorite bands and one of the bands that meant so much to you? Um, you have to find the correct terminology and the correct information to just put out there. Mostly, what I wanted to focus on with this episode was that looking back at that time of the '90s, is that of course we were so overwhelmed in a good way with what I guess you want to say the narrative was at the time was calling things grunge and alternative. I still, again, to this day, alternative to what? Okay, whatever you want to call it. We were overwhelmed by the wonderful music of what obviously five main bands, and I say that meaning Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Nirvana, Stone Temple Pilots, and Pearl Jam. Of course, there are those that have the big four, which is just Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Nirvana, and Alice in Chains, which came out of the Seattle scene. I actually got into an argument with somebody over that lately. It was hysterical because I don't really do the whole big four. I consider a big five, and I always put Stone Temple Pilots in there. But that being said, you know, the great thing about Typo Negative was that they did not fit into that category. They were not alternative. They were not a grunge band. I know a lot of people have kind of put them in the goth metal category, which is interesting because I never knew there was really much of a goth metal category. What I like to say is that they had their own unique sound, and that's what one of the main reasons why I loved about them the most is because it's very rare, especially in today's world, that we find a musical group or a singer that has their own original sound. Because I think so many times more, unfortunately, you'll hear something and you'll say, "Well, yeah, I kind of that sounds like you know who they remind me of," or "I kind of heard that already." Like it's funny, man. When I used to play typo negative for people who never heard of them, I would always get a very interesting reaction. And a lot of them, whether it was for my father, who's a music aficionado, mostly of all things from the 60s and the 50s, of course, but or an ex-girlfriend, one of them being she just didn't get it, which I don't understand, or just friends or people who were into music, or maybe I thought they would have been interested in something different, or they just heard me listening to them. I always got a lot of different reactions. One was always like, "Wow, that's an interesting sound," or "Hey, that band, what's up with that guy's voice? He's got a really interesting voice." And or I would always get something like, "Wow, those lyrics are something, man. I never heard stuff like that before." And I think like a lot of, again, I'm talking about myself here. I cannot talk for anybody else, but I would like to think that for a lot of like us typo negative fans, that's what we really loved the most was the sound, the unique sound that they had, how tight they were as a group, and how each album kind of brought together its own life, and the lyrics, which were you've never heard anything like that before. And that's always really good for the listeners and the fans because you're giving them something so different and so unique. So that's one thing I really wanted to focus on with this episode, because I think that one of my good buddies I got to give a shout out to, of course, my buddy Frank Ferry, who I mentioned before. Growing up, him and I were typo negative maniacs. We still are to this day. In fact, a lot of our messages back and forth will always have something to do with typo negative. We'll either quote one of the songs, we'll quote something funny that we heard from them, or we'll talk about the music. And him and I saw typo negative 14 times together. I think we saw one show was back-to-back nights at the same venue. I want to say, I forgot where the venue was, but we saw them back-to-back nights, which was hysterical because we were literally standing in the same place at the same time, just a night later, 24 hours later. We had no sleep whatsoever. It was awesome. But yeah, man, him and I were just like knee deep in typo negative. We were like discovering them at the same time, which was back in '94 and '95 when they were getting some radio play. Thank God on 104.3 or 92.3. And at the time they would have these music metal blocks, or blocks for new bands, or blocks for bands that were up and coming, or who had some new material out there. And again, all I would hear would be Christian Woman and Black Number One. And I was, mesmerized by them. So I had another buddy to bounce off the music to, because Frank loved it too. And from there, we were just rolling, man, with them. That's how we discovered them. And the funny thing was, we discovered them actually late, because, they had albums and work they had put out years before this. We had no idea. But from there, you know, it was, I remember just like buying Bloody Kisses, going through, I bought it on cassette too, going through the tape and kind of just reading all the lyrics. I had never heard anything like that. I was mesmerized by everything in there. I was mesmerized by the music, that unique sound. I can't even put it into words, like that sound, but everything that they were, singing about, and the way that the music sounded and everything, a lot of us could relate to that to some extent. Especially when you're, younger and adolescent and whatnot, and you're coming up at a certain time. Um, you can definitely feel some type of similarity with the artist, whoever it is that you're listening to, and that that you really like. So I always felt that they are one of the most underrated bands there were. And I remember when we were first listening to them and stuff like that, you know, and as they grew, we were always wondering, I can't believe, I mean, they were on Howard Stern. Peter was very good friend. The band was very good friends with Howard Stern. They were on his soundtrack for his movie, Private Parts. They did that song with Ozzy Osbourne, the combination of Pictures of Matchstick Men, which is awesome. Um, and they were on various other soundtracks as well. I Know What You Did Last Summer. They were in Freddy vs. Jason. Um, they even made a film. Well, it was like they used the typo negative music to be the background for the Nosferatu film, the silent movie, and it was really good. I have the DVD. If you ever want to see something really cool with some, just like it's like what basically it's watching the Nosferatu movie instead of, there were subtitles, of course, so it wasn't a voicey movie, but the typo negative music filled in. So it was so cool, man, that the way they did that. Excellent. So again, they were all over the place. They were playing at huge festivals. They were playing, you know, primarily a lot of the time in Europe, these great music festivals, which we never have over here, or we used to have years ago, and we just don't have that anymore. Um, so we couldn't believe that they like weren't, I don't want to use the word commercial, but I guess bigger than they were. But to that extent, I always had a lot of respect for them, because after hearing a lot of interviews with the band and stuff like that, and reading a lot of excerpts from a lot of different interviews, I found out that the good thing was that they always wanted to have concerts and venues and stuff like that was affordable to people, which made so much sense. Now, what I can say about that is that kind of goes along. There's a similarity between them, Pearl Jam, and Nirvana. There's that great video out there. I forgot where you can find it, but I've seen it on Instagram, where Kurt Cobain is told that Madonna charges like $70 or $60 at the time for her concert. And he's like in shock, where they're charging like, I don't know, 30 to 40 bucks or even lower. And he's like, I can't understand anyone charging that much money for a show. And I also mentioned Pearl Jam with that, because I remember Pearl Jam had that whole battle. I forgot what the company, it was a Ticketmaster. Pearl Jam fans, Chris Verano, John Antista, you would know that more than I would. They had that whole battle with them, and didn't understand why fans were going to pay these astronomical prices to go see them, when they could have charged a lot less money and made it more affordable for people. So there's a similarity between typo negative, Nirvana, and Pearl Jam. That's one thing I always respected about typo negative, that their shows were very reasonable to go to. In fact, I remember going to see them, had to be in 2001. It was the first and only time, again with Frank Ferry, we saw them at L'Amour's, which is that classic rock club from back in the day in Brooklyn, and we saw them there. And again, it was a really affordable show. It wasn't. It was a was packed as you could be, but it wasn't an arena, but it didn't have to be. I mean, could really appreciate the music, and you could really appreciate the atmosphere and everything, especially a place like that, which had been around for so long and which had established so many wonderful acts during the years, and in which, Type O Negative had performed so many times. So, and it went hand in hand. Type O Negative Brooklyn, Type O Negative Brooklyn. There you go. What's better than that? But yeah, we saw them there. Saw them a couple different times. I think one of the biggest venues we ever saw them at. Again, I think it was the Fillmore East or West, if it's still called that. It was a pretty big venue, but like not, it wasn't something where you'd have to pay an astronomical price to go and see. Because again, the great thing about them was they played the whole show for 2 hours. Hardly stopped in between. They did great instrumentals. I remember Peter always going into, what was it, Aqualung by Jethro Tull, dun, 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 and it sounded phenomenal on his deep bass. Or the band would go into Come As You Are from Nirvana, and he would stop and say something funny. But again, the great thing about them was they played for the amount of time you would see them, never took a break, did an encore, and they were so friendly, and they would talk to the audience and everything like that. So you always felt like that you were part of the show, where you were really there, as opposed to being sitting in Jesus Christ box up in heaven, where you can't, it's good sometimes, but I mean, at the same time, it's not, especially when you're paying $125 to $150 to sit in the nosebleeders, and you're listening, they're all the way, the band is all the way, Jesus, how many miles in front of you on the ground. So the good thing was, like, they played these venues where you can really appreciate it. And if you were near the mosh pit, oh shit, bro, duck. I remember, I think one of the venues I saw them at was Roseland back in the day. I think it was the first time I ever saw them, or the second, and a mosh pit just broke out. And I remember there was a dude we saw outside online. If you're familiar with Roseland, the line used to go like from the box office all the way around the corner. We were waiting around on the corner. I remember there was a guy, I remember him like cutting himself with something on his arm. And we saw him when we went into the show, and it was him in the mosh pit, man. It was the same show too that I saw a guy. We saw a guy laying ass out. When I say ass out, I mean out cold on the floor, convulsing rather. I don't know what he had taken, whatever, but I remember an ambulance came in, grabbed him, scooped him up, and brought him out. But again, yeah, man, they played these great venues that you could appreciate, and you didn't have to go broke paying. So that's one thing I always respected about them. And I think to piggyback on what I was saying about not selling out, not being commercial, that's what I love about this band. They never sold themselves out. They never went commercial. And when I say that, I'm not trying to diss any other bands that have done that, but let's face it, there's a lot of groups that we see that, I guess to some extent, it's easier for us to say they've sold out. But again, like on a commercial level, I think that, there are bands that obviously have kind of went the way of the dollar and just taken the high and mighty road, and they don't give a shit less. And I'm not going to sit here and shit on other bands and do that, but there are many that come to mind. All right, when U2 used to be U2, I know there's no comparison between them and Type O Negative, but remember when U2 actually used to be U2 as opposed to whatever there is now? Same thing as Coldplay. Remember when Coldplay used to be Coldplay? I saw Coldplay years ago at Nassau Coliseum. Phenomenal show, phenomenal concert. What happened to them? Anyway, going back to what I was talking about. So that's one of the main reasons why we loved Type O Negative. And it's funny, as my buddy and I got more into them, we always were trying to figure out where they came from. We found out they came from Brooklyn. We were like shit stunned. And my friend Frank and I took a ride to see if we could find Peter's house, because he lived in Brooklyn. I had so much family. I'm born in Brooklyn, raised in Queens, and a lot of my family lived in Brooklyn, grew up in Brooklyn for, God, so many years, and they were very familiar with the area. So we had gone and looked for his house at the time. We couldn't find it at the time, but we thought it was a trip where they were from. So Moving forward, of course, again, like I said, they're one of the bands that I had talked about, or back when we did who was the greatest lead man of all time during the '90s, and I had mentioned Peter. And like I said, Peter and Typo Negative were a group that had kind of crossed over the threshold of the time. Again, they had crossed over into the '90s, but had been together in the late '80s, and had come from other musical groups as well. So obviously he had formed the first group. I think it was called Fallout, which is, I think it was him and Josh Silver and another musician. But the good thing about them is if you ever go to YouTube and go to Fallout, you can hear their song Rock Hard. Phenomenal song. Phenomenal song. Again, it doesn't sound like, it sounds like, literally, it sounds like I want to say like a punkish 80s band, but like very, very hard to describe, like almost sort of like Depeche Mode a little bit. So there was Fallout, of course. Then they had split, and then Peter Steele formed Carnivore, which was a hardcore band, man. And they actually had a couple of revivals over the years. But again, going back to what I was saying, so this is a Peter was back in the late '70s, early '80s, all through the '80s, and then of course when they had broken up, you know, Typo Negative was formed, obviously, uh, which I believe was in 1989. Back with his friend, Josh Silver. I think they lived on the same block actually. Kenny Hickey, phenomenal guitarist. I actually have more respect for him now as a guitar. I always had respect for him, but I think he's a phenomenal guitarist. Uh, I actually loved his vocals too. He's and when I say I had more respect, not that I didn't have respect for him, but when sometimes in hindsight you appreciate things so much more. He's just really good guitarist, man. And at the time, the drummer was Sal Bruscato, who was later replaced by the great Johnny Kelly. Again, another phenomenal drummer, man. If you go back and just listen to the whole catalog again, you will see that this band was very tight and tuned with each other when it came to music, and that's rare. Josh Silver, of course, on the keyboard. Um, Phenomenal, man. I mean, they were really good musical minds that just made phenomenal songs, man. They really killed it. I loved every one of their albums, man. But yeah, so they were originally called Repulsion, which is a fucking great name, man. I think there was some type of legal issues where they had to change the name. And then I think they were something else called like Sub Zero or something like that. Again, another, it's a great name, man. But listen, there's nothing better than Typo Negative. I mean, that grabs your attention, right away. I mean, it's definitely something that just, I think grabs your eyes, grabs your ears, and, pulls you in, makes you want to listen to it. So again, they released their first album, Slow, Deep, and Hard. Phenomenal name for an album, by the way, in '91. So again, like I said before, you've got this band doing several different albums during the '90s. I mean, that's some hard work. I can't even imagine what it's like to make an album. But I mean, if to make, what do we got here? We got Slow, Deep, and Hard. Then you got Origin of the Feces, and then you got Bloodykisses, and then you got Octoberrust. And then you got World Coming Down. To put out that much work in such a little amount of time is phenomenal. And we used to always be wanting more and more and say, why haven't they put out an album? Why haven't they put it out? But all the hard work that goes into it is just amazing, in terms of the songwriting, the production value, the editing. God knows what's going on in their personal lives and whatnot. So it definitely takes a lot, and a lot of bands we don't see that are able to do that. Sometimes they'll be on hiatus for a long time, which is it is what it is. But the one thing about this first album is that you can hear a lot of Carnivore in it. It still, I think they were still trying to fine tune their sound. I had read an article somewhere where one of the band members had said that they were still trying to find their sound. And sometimes with bands you'll see that in early work sometimes you may not, if you compare it to their later work to an album which was like more fine-tuned, you will see a difference. So if, like, for instance, two albums that come to mind which I've mentioned before are Nirvana's Bleach and Nirvana's Nevermind. And of course, like, when you listen to Bleach, it's more raw, it's more punk, it's not as polished, it's not as pretty. When you listen to Nevermind, it's packaged, pretty, and whatever. Now, there's really no, I mean, they're both phenomenal albums, but there's really no negative towards the two. It's just a difference of atmosphere, and I think that's what was happening with this album, is that you still had a lot of that hardcore doom metal, as they called it, over from Carnivore, with a lot of the great lyrics that the band, Peter and the band, was always writing. So they were it was almost like they were trying to merge into something, and you can hear that on this album really well. And it's again, it's always good to go back and give the catalog a listen, man. You really have to do it to see where a band has come from, to see where they've, especially musically, to see where, in which direction they're going. I think that's always something you have to do, just to get a better feeling for the band, and just to get a better feeling for them. So that was definitely with this album. Um, off that album came, you had, a good thing about this band too is I love the fact that they had long ass songs, like 9, 10, 11, 12 minutes. There's nothing better than that. And the most wonderful thing, one of the many wonderful things about them, was the way they were able to change up the sound during the song. And you hear this in songs like Too Late, uh, or you hear it in These Three Things on Deadagain, their last album, or I Know You're Fucking Someone Else. They have, like, in within the song, there's different parts of it, which is phenomenal. It's phenomenal, man. And I don't see that today. Today you just don't get that. Today it's like quick, boom, bang, in and out. Like, what is that, man? Like, there's no depth at all. That's the one thing that really pisses me off about a lot of music today. There is no depth. These songs had depth. They were extended. They would You could appreciate the changing of the tune, whether it was going from really hard to really fast to really slow, or the difference in the sounds and in the instruments. And you had that on this album. Unsuccessfully coping with the natural beauty of infidelity, which is just another eye-catching title for a song. Zero Tolerance, Prelude to Agony, um, Gravitational Constant. You had a lot of length with these songs. And again, I think that they were just really trying to just find what they were, And sometimes, you see bands that they'll say, well, we weren't really taking it serious. We were kind of just jamming and see where we would get. And things end up being a hit, which is a great thing, man. And I've heard a couple of the band members mention that before, I believe. But again, that you can really appreciate the roots from where they were coming from, again, from the 80s with the metal, from the late 70s. So it's really good to always go back and see where things have kind of started, almost like a family tree in a sense. And then their next album, of course, was The Origin of the Feces. Phenomenal name for an album. The great thing about this is that it's a mock live album. I always thought, like an idiot, that it was a live album at first, and then I found out it wasn't, because again, I think that a lot of the band members were doing, they were also doing, like, the sound as the crowd and shit like that. And if you listen to it carefully, you hear so many funny moments in it. And again, I think that's genius in itself, that they were able to do that. Very rare that we have that. But yeah, it's a mock live album, but a phenomenal album all around. I mean, it had some really wonderful songs on it, man. In fact, like I said before, I had gone backwards in the catalog, and I'd gone from Bloodykisses backwards and Octoberrust backwards, that I start to do the listening. And again, I Know You're Fucking Someone Else, Are You Afraid, Gravity, Pain, Kill You Tonight, Hey Pete, which is their version of Jimi Hendrix's Hey Joe, Kill You Tonight, and the reprise, and Paranoid, which is their cover of Black Sabbath's Paranoid. Now, on that note of covers, let me say this. they did the most kick-ass covers to songs that there ever was. In my opinion, they made the cover better. I'm sorry, they made the song better or just as good or ultra original. And I think you can say that for all their covers, whether it was the Beatles, them covering the Beatles back in the USSR, them covering the Beatles, If I Needed Someone, if one of the most phenomenal covers I ever heard them do, and I think a lot of people would agree with me, is Dear Prudence. And I only can find, I always wish that they had an actual track of that. The only I can find is ones at live concerts on YouTube, and I was there twice that they did it. I forgot the name of the concert venue in Jersey. I saw them a couple times but they did it there, and it was phenomenal, man. Um, and somewhere else I saw them do it, but that was a great cover. On this album, like I said, you had Hey Pete and you had Paranoid, which is a magnificent cover of the Black Sabbath song. So different because Black Sabbath one is very sped up and very, hard, or very just like speedy. This is kind of really pulled back and just kind of slow and just like heavy and deep. And it's like a perfect typo negative song. And I think it's like one of these songs that was their sound, or one of the sounds that they could really create, because they had the ability to go really slow. Like the album says, slow, deep, and harder. They could speed it up and go really in your face fast. That was the genius of this group too, is that their ability, again, like I said, to kind of just go back and forth or stay somewhere in the middle. Hey Pete is a phenomenal song too, because they take Hey Joe and make it their own. You know, and it's really interesting and really, really well done. Um, but other than that, there are some other great songs on this album. And again, I think that, as a typo negative fan, you can really go back and appreciate this album. Especially my favorite is probably Kill You Tonight, the reprise. I mean, those are some kick-ass lyrics in the beginning, especially the way it speeds up as you go along. I remember we would look up the lyrics, and we always trying to figure out what he was saying. Got a big axe in the trunk of my car, put it to the ground, get it real sharp. There's a what is it? There's a nasty green monster in my head. Leave me alone until I'm dead. I called your house, but you couldn't be reached at the D train to Brighton Beach. Do anything with something um screwing on the sand, something. And then there's that other verse. Took some steroids and adrenaline, plenty of vodka, hallucinogens. It keeps going and going. I mean, really, really interesting, awesome lyrics. And then the song slows down and gets deep and heavy. So again, phenomenal album. And again, I think that they were fine tuning their sound, because again, this album showed that they were able to kind of, go fast, go slow, and they had this great like dark comedy thing going on there too, with like the whole mock live. There aren't too many bands that do a mock live album that I know of, so you appreciated it so much more. Um, and of course, moving on from there was their another thing too is they had great artwork on their albums. There's some drilling in the background. I don't know, someone's doing some type of drilling. Um, yeah, they always had great artwork in the background, especially the origin of the Feces. There's that cover of the skeletons dancing around, which is always interesting. Yeah, so they were hitting it on all ends, man. And again, very very underrated for the time being. I think a lot of people, for whatever reason, didn't really know what to make of them, which I could understand to an extent. But listen, man, talent is talent. That's just the way it is. You don't have to like it, but again, you can't deny it when you hear it. Their third album, of course, probably one of the most famous, was Bloody Kisses. And of course, off this album came the great Black Number One, Christian Woman, which were, commercially probably the two of their biggest hits ever. Two phenomenal songs in themselves. And this was actually the last of the original lineup. Sal Bruscato, the drummer, would leave in 1993. And again, I think this is the album where they found themselves. They found their sound. Um, they had, again, a phenomenal amount of songs off this album. Summer Breeze, probably other than Cinnamon Girl, the best cover songs I've ever heard. In fact, I mentioned my father before, had played Summer Breeze for him. This version, and I asked him what did he think of it, and at first he just kind of had this look on his face. He goes, "It's different." He goes, "It's not bad." And this is a dude who grew up with, in the late 50s, early 60s, and Seals and Crofts and their songs. So he was familiar with that version, but he kind of dug it. Set Me on Fire, Dark Side of the Room, We Hate Everyone, phenomenal, phenomenal song. Uh, Bloody Kisses, Death in the Family, Too Late, Frozen, Blood and Fire, Can't Lose You. Again, like they're going back and forth. You got Christian Woman, that's kind of like, I don't even know what you'd call that, man. Like it's some people call it doom metal. I don't know what, there's like a category for everything, man. I mean, it's so weird, man. We got what's is there clown metal? Is there fucking I Climb a Tree Naked and I don't know, Moon Truck Drivers metal? I don't know, whatever the hell. It's just a phenomenal song though. And again, it's funny. They were a group that really kind of put themselves out there and went with a lot of what they were, weren't afraid to just kind of put the song out there and sing what they were going to sing about. With all we got going on today, who knows how this would have happened, how things would have gone on. But I mean, thank God they came along when they did in that span of time and were able to produce some great songs, man. Black Number One, phenomenal song, man. As a young guy, I didn't know that song had anything to do with hair dye, nothing at all. But great, great song, man. And I love that in that, in Christian Woman, there's, again, the changing of the music where the song slows down and they go with a different sound and it builds up. I mean, it's phenomenal. Um, yeah, Summer Breeze. Again, that's was in the beginning of I Know What You Did Last Summer, the opening credits when they're showing the beach and whatnot. That's the song you hear there. So again, they were all over the place, man. Set Me on Fire is a phenomenal song. We Hate Everyone is so good, man. If you really want to like get a good workout in or get your aggression out, put that song on really loud, hit the punching bag, lift the weights, do whatever you got to do. Perfect for it, man. Just great, great song. Same thing with Too Late, Frozen. I saw them perform that at, oh my God, is it Mulcahy's? At the bar in Long Island? Again, not a huge venue, but they were phenomenal. And during that song, or towards the end of the song, I remember they had a snow machine, like a foam machine, and that shit was everywhere, man. And it was all over their hair. I remember Peter covering the microphone with a towel, which was really funny. But again, a great song. Blood and Fire, just phenomenal. Even Can't Lose You, the last song on the album, is very slowed down. You have that great sitar in there, which I think was performed by the great Paul Bento. Super, super nice guy. Um, super, super great musician, and just like I said, phenomenally kind and nice. Knows his music really well. You could tell like he's a student of music. Just really knows his stuff. Has that great sound in there. But yeah, man, this was a monster album for them. And it's funny looking at charts and sales and all that stuff. It's funny that at the time, all I could find was that this ranked 166 on the Billboard 200. I don't know what was going on at the Billboard 200 at that time, but this should have ranked a lot higher than that. And again, I don't know why they weren't up in the charts, whatever they weren't doing, whatever the case may be. But this is a phenomenal album. And I don't even know what the sales are for this. Not that that always means anything, because it doesn't. Because listen, we've seen a lot of bands that, no offense, I mean, some have sold better than others and some weren't the best. And sometimes you find again that some of the albums that may have been not as famous or not of commercially, whatever you want to call them, sold a lot better and were tighter and better. And yeah, I couldn't find much with that um, when it came to sales and whatnot. But this was one of their albums that put them on the mark. And again, they had such a good rating from so many different people. Um, and they would perform a lot of. They would. I think they rode like a really big touring schedule from this album. I believe. Which would make a lot of sense because they had a lot of good songs on there, and they were coming along too, as a group and everything. So love that album to death, man. Then of course comes Octoberrust, which is again, it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. You can go back today and listen to it, and it's got hit after hit, song after song. It's phenomenally done. You know, a list of great songs. There are people who always make these, I guess, somewhat arguments, or uh, they compare which album was better. Was it Octoberrust or was it Bloodykisses? It's really hard to decide because I love both of them. Again, it's funny when you look on the genres and it's gothic metal or doom metal. Uh, I just want to know who came up with those things, man. This album, of course, had that really cool art too on the front cover. Those kind of the the pointy thorns and everything. Um, and again, man, it's so hard to decide which was better. I mean, this had that comical opening where they kind of made it sound like the CD skipped and shit like that, which was really funny. And you hear one of them making like chicken sounds and stuff like that, which is great. And then it opens with "Love You to Death," which, oh my God, man. I don't think you have to be a Type O Negative fan, or if you hear that song, you're going to appreciate it. I don't give a shit if you listen to Ass Supply or, the soundtrack to Mork and Mindy. You're going to like that song. It is an absolute phenomenal sound. In fact, in my opinion, as along with Falling in Love with You by the great Elvis Presley, Love You to Death, I think, is one of the best wedding songs ever, or could be, or should be one of the best wedding songs of all time. It would totally make sense. Um, Great song, man. Phenomenal lyrics. And again, slowed down, not really that fast. Just a wonderful pace. You can appreciate everything in there. Be My Druidess is phenomenal. I love that song. Um, Green Man could be one of their best songs of all time. You know how long it took me to figure out that the sound in the beginning was the truck starting? I didn't know that. I didn't know what the hell that was, man. Lyrics. Ah, what great lyrics. The more you listen and read the lyrics, you really appreciate the fact that Peter was an extremely intelligent human being, was really in tune with his lyrics. Sometimes you'll hear songs where the lyrics are kind of kish-kosh bullshit, or as my father would say, what does he call it? Cotton candy bullshit. And sometimes look, it works. It's a hit. We get it. It's a tune that you can sing to, snap to, whatever. But when you really get in depth with a song, you can really appreciate the lyrics. Green Man, phenomenal lyrics, man. So again, you really appreciate him as a songwriter, how he would put the songs together, um, and you learn also too that there was a history behind that. Of course, Green Man being that he worked for the Parks Department, a job in which he really loved. Obviously, he loved being in the outdoors and being among nature and whatnot. So it makes sense. Red Water, I love. Christmas Morning. At the time, again, I didn't really know what it was about, but as you go on, you start to figure out what it's about. It's just phenomenal. And they also, a lot of these songs had great sound effects in them. I mean, you hear the chick crying, you hear the glasses break and everything, and again, phenomenal lyrics. My Girlfriend's Girlfriend. Is there not a better title for a song? That was a phenomenal video, man. I remember everything that stuck out in that song most of all was, "We don't care what people say when walking hand in hand down King's Highway." And if you're from Brooklyn, or you were born there, or you know of Brooklyn really well and you've been on King's Highway, that song has even like a more connection to it. But that's just a phenomenal group of lyrics right there. Great video, by the way. Die With Me, phenomenal song. And again, you're seeing like through the tracks that you're going at different, you're in all different directions here. Some are a little faster. My girlfriend's girlfriend was a little more sped up. Die with me is pulled back. Burn flowers fallen. Um, in the middle, great song. In praise of Bacchus, definitely one of the greatest songs they've ever had off of their whole catalog. Um, if you've ever wanted to see a phenomenal performance, I don't know what concert it's from on YouTube, but Typo Negative is doing In Praise of Bacchus live, and you hear Peter yelling at one point. I think it's take the train to say hello, oh, whatever it is. Phenomenal. They were so good live. And that's always, I think, how you can judge a band is by how good are they live. A lot of people have said disparaging things about various bands that they really liked, and when they went to see them, it was really disappointing. So sometimes you really want to appreciate them more. And I think the best way to do that in terms of judgment is to see them live. And every time we saw Typo Negative live, man, they would kick ass. So, yeah, and Praise of Bacchus is such a good song. Again, the lyrics are phenomenal. And these are lyrics that I keep singing or keep in my head over and over, no matter what. Um, you know, it took me a while to figure out that what is it? He was singing about the Statue of Liberty in a song. A lonely blue girl guards the riverbed. She shakes a torch to the tide. I mean, that's phenomenal. I was like, oh shit. I forgot who told me that's the Statue of Liberty. I'm like, I never knew that. I mean, again, going back years ago, and then it all makes sense because again, Peter, Brooklyn, the waterfront and the Statue of Liberty being right there when you're coming down the Bell Parkway and you go farther down, Zavarian High School's on your right. So it makes a lot of sense. But I love the song. Cinnamon Girl, like I said before, probably the best cover song they've ever made. Better than Neil Young's original. I don't care what anybody says. Better than Neil Young's original song. Okay? They made that bitch their own. That was their own song. It was so good. In fact, when I first heard that, I had never even known about Neil Young or Cinnamon Girl. So I always thought that obviously it was a lot better. But you also have to appreciate how they were able to take a song from the 70s that sounded a certain way and combined it to make it their own sound, which is always a lot of credit to a group. And again, that doesn't always work sometimes because sometimes you'll see a band cover a song, they'll either butcher it, make it their own, it just doesn't, it's just, or they'll either do exactly the same version of it that was done, or you'll do what Typo Negative does with all their covers and make it their own, which is just phenomenal. There's that great interlude, that little 1 minute 7 second, you hear them all chanting, and again, the glorious liberation of the People's Technocratic Republic of Finland by the combined forces of the United Territories of Europa. When you see something like that, you're like, okay, wait a second, let me step back. Holy shit, what does that even mean? Wolf Moon. Oh man, Wolf Moon holds a special place in my heart. Every time I hear it, I think of my Siberian Husky Lobo, because that song was, hence being the name Wolf Moon. I always kind of put the two and two together. Phenomenal song. Another one that I think I only saw them do that live a couple times. Every time they did it, amazing. That is definitely in their top 10 best songs of their catalog, in my opinion. Haunted is such an underrated song. Such an underrated song. Because its length, the way it kind of sets itself up and then just slowly takes its time and builds and builds. The lyrics are underrated. Okay. I think it's, again, phenomenal sound in that song. I love the music in that song. It reminds me of the cemetery in Brooklyn there. I forgot that name. What is it called? That famous cemetery where Bill the Butcher is buried, and a couple other Greenwood Cemetery. That's what it always reminds me of, man. Great, phenomenal song, an amazing album, and again, it had a lot of good. This album got a lot of good ratings from the Chicago Tribune, Chronicles of Chaos, Metal Storm. I guess these were magazines or something like that at the time when they did have magazines, right? Go figure. And of course, this was, you know, an album that we saw them start to really appear hardcore on the charts. And very interestingly enough, on the charts in Europe, they were always huge. Austrian, Belgium, Dutch, Finnish, German, Hungarian, Norwegian, Swedish, Swiss, UK. they were in the, for the most part, the upper 30s, or even, even higher. Some they went as high as number 3 in the Swedish area. On the U.S. Billboard 200, they were number 42. Again, that's pretty damn good. I don't know what else was out there at the time, but this was a really phenomenal album. And again, by some of the numbers I see, it sold well over 500,000 albums, putting them in the gold status. So again, you could say they never sold themselves out. They never lost what they were. They never forgot where they came from, and you appreciate that so much because it really shows how into the music they were. And I guess that too, that them being at the level they were at, they were able to control a lot more of the music as opposed to maybe these you know big other companies that would have had a say in every little nit and picked everything and just had a say in everything they did. So I guess that's the way you want to be when you're really that type of artist. You really want to have a say over your stuff so you can have some type of control over it, or total control, which is very understandable. Um, so they're at this point, like I said, they were well tuned. They found their sound. I mean, that was them. That sound on this album and the and Bloody Kisses, that's exactly what Type O Negative was. And it was a unique sound. It was a one of a kind sound. You had never heard anything like that before. The music was their own. They had their own identity, which, of course, at that time, going along with the things that were coming out, especially in the late 90s, they were, so different and so in another atmosphere, in another universe. Hence, be why you appreciated them so much. That's at least why I appreciated them a lot. The other album that came out in the 90s, 99, is one of my favorite albums from that catalog, World Coming Down. Now, it's funny, I had seen a lot of people saying how supposedly this wasn't one of the band's most favorite albums, which I guess they have their reasons for. Maybe it was tough to record, maybe they were going through tough times, whatever the case may be. But I think musically, it is a phenomenal album. Is it deep and heavy? Very. It's very deep and heavy, but it's just first off, the title "World Coming Down" is amazing. The picture on the album, one of the best photos I've ever seen, man. It's the I think it's the Verrazano Bridge, or the Brooklyn Bridge, I believe. And you've got that great shot of it from across the water. You see the rocks in front, and it's in green, green Type O Negative. Perfect, man. And I saw them on this tour, and they were absolutely phenomenal. Great album, man. Again, under the categories, it was gothic metal and doom metal. What is doom metal? I think of Doom, I think of the video game. I don't know what that means, or I think of Doctor Doom or some shit like that. But yeah, from this album came so many really good songs. And there's those really cool little those quick snippets of like the sinus, where you hear the guy breathing or sneezing, then his liver, lung. So some really cool things going on there. And it's a phenomenal White Slavery, phenomenal song. And of course, I believe that was about the cocaine addiction, or the battles with cocaine. Everyone I love, Everyone I Love Is Dead is one of my favorite songs of all times. In fact, it's one of the songs I'll go to in the Type O Negative catalog that I can keep on repeat all the time. When you think about it in relative terms, what he's singing about is actually, everyone I love is dead. You could understand that, because for some people that is the situation. Great, phenomenal song. Who Will Save the Saint? An underrated song off that album that does not get its due. Again, a very slow song to an extent, very heavy, very, um, very lyrical. What I mean is, like, very deep into the lyrics. You really have to pay attention to the lyrics. Sometimes we don't do that when we listen to music, but that's a song you really should do. Should listen to the lyrics, especially with that one. World Coming Down is, I can say, my top 5 favorite songs by them. I love their lyrics. In fact, one of the lyrics that always stuck out of my mind in that song is, um, I'm in World Coming Down is, she thinks I'm Iron Man, but I'm forgetting the lyrics now. She thinks I'm Iron Man, that I don't feel shame. I could understand. Like, I mean, phenomenal song, man. Phenomenal all around. And it's 11 minutes and 10 seconds long. And then he goes into that great, there's that whole the song kind of slows down. He kind of talks about better to burn uh, quick and right. And then it kind of picks up again. And, you hear just that. You hear just Peter's voice and, at my way. And then it just gets heavy again. Oh, man. Shit, just talking about this, man, I miss them so much performing. I miss them as a band. I miss the fall and the Halloween time being around and not having to go see, not having to have marked on my calendar to go see Typo Negative. It sucks. It absolutely sucks. And let me say this, the day he died, a lot of music died with it. That whole music was never the same for me, you know. And I say that because, a lot of my favorites, a lot of the guys the artists that I love are dead, unfortunately. I wasn't around for Elvis, obviously. I wasn't around I was around for Johnny Cash towards the end, but I wasn't around for him in his heyday. Um, those two, unfortunately, passed away. Um, we lost the great Scott Weiland. We lost Kurt Cobain. We lost the great Lane Staley. We lost Chris Cornell. And we lost Peter Steele. So a lot of the guys who I loved have unfortunately passed away. And just going through the catalog sometimes, or listening to the music or reading the lyrics will always kind of does two things to me. It reminds me of what a phenomenal band they were, and that there won't be anymore, and that really sucks. Or there won't be anymore in terms of Typo Negative. Not, it just absolutely sucks. But getting back to it, yeah, man, World Coming Down is just one of my favorite songs of all time. Creepy Green Light is a great underrated song. I hold that up there with Who Will Save the Sane, very underrated. Everything Dies. Again, in a practical way, he's 100% right. Everything dies, man. And it's a phenomenal song. He's got one of the greatest lyrics in that song. I'm searching for something which can't be found, but I'm hoping. I love that. Oh, Pirate Blaze, man. Shit. You want to laugh? I can remember driving around Brooklyn with my buddy Frank Ferry. I think he had a black Maxima, and we would blast this song. Um, we had been gallivanting somewhere in Brooklyn. I don't know what we were up to back then, but I remember blasting this song, over and over again. I mean, loud. Back in the day when the windows were rolled down, used to blast that shit out. All Hallows Eve, listen, man. There's nothing more badass than All Hallows Eve. That All Hallows Eve tells a whole story, which I loved about their music. And I remember going through the lyrics of the album. You listen to an album, you go through it, and sometimes then you go back and revisit, and you have the lyrics out with you, and you really get in depth with it. There are lyrics in that blew my mind at the time. Saint Lucifer, hear me praying to thee on this eve of all saints. High be the price, but then nothing is free. My soul I gladly trade. What the fuck? That's some deep ass shit, bro. I remember I didn't know what to think about that. Being a Catholic, and when I say that, I am going to hell so fast it's not even funny. I'm not the prototypical good Catholic at all. In fact, I'm always afraid that if I do go to church, it's going to burn. But you know, you used to look at those lyrics and say, "Holy shit! I don't know if I should be singing this, but this is some good shit." Like, it was really, well in depth of the song, and of course, just like talking about, selling your soul for the woman you love to come back from the dead on All Hallows Eve. When there's not a better time to come back from All Hallows Eve. And then there is the wonderful finale of them covering Day Tripper by the Beatles, If I Needed Someone, and I Want You, She's So Heavy. Oh, man. Again, I've played that cover for people who knew nothing about Type O Negative, and they absolutely loved it. And that's what I really appreciated about them, was their ability to cover so many artists from different times, whether it was Neil Young, the Beatles, Seals and Crofts. It showed what a great variety they had, what they were able to do. No one, a lot of people cannot make that happen. They cannot pull that shit off. In fact, in terms of covers, if you saw them live, I was lucky enough to see them cover Magical Mystery Tour, as well as I want to say they covered a song by the Doors. I can't remember what it was. I know. Light My Fire. It was. I saw them do it live, and I forgot where I was when I saw them do that live. But it was absolutely great version, man. So again, that, this version of them doing that, I mean, this cover is great, man. They had the ability to do that on so many of their albums, and just, you know, make, like I said, make the song your own. And sometimes if you saw them in concert, they would you would see, them cover something else that obviously wasn't you didn't hear on an album or anything like that. Or like I said, that's how I had hear them do Dear Prudence. It wasn't something that they recorded in a studio. It was something I just heard them do live, and it was amazing. And I'm still trying to figure out what the name of that concert venue I saw them at in Jersey. It's a famous place, man. I can't think of the damn name of it. I've been there various times. I've seen them there. Oh, it'll come to me some way, shape, or form. But yeah, this is one of my favorite albums by them, and I think it's one of their more underrated albums for whatever reason. And looking in terms of on the charts again, I mean, very high in Austria, Dutch, in Europe, Finnish, German, Norwegian, Swedish. In the UK, on the US, it was 39 out of 400, out of 200. I remember looking to see where this had ranked in Rolling Stone magazine at the time when I did read Rolling Stone. And again, I don't. It was relatively. They got really good reviews for it, which is understandable. In terms of like sales, I don't know what it sold, but it should have sold. I hope it sold a shitload of albums. And from this, after this album, of course, came "Life Is Killing Me," which came along in 2003. So a little 4-year hiatus for them. And of course, now here we go. They're crossing over into another time, 2000s, man. A lot of bands cannot be relative from different times. They were able to do that. And Life Is Killing Me, again, another great album. Okay, and it was their final album released through Roadrunner Records. They had this really nice relationship with them up until then. And again, this is just another album like the others that tells its own story with phenomenal songs. I Don't Want to Be Me was commercially their most famous song off there. That great video with that comedian in it who's like, you see him kind of dressed up as Marilyn Monroe, then he's dressed up as all these different characters. I think Peter makes an appearance at the end of the video holding a baby, which is awesome, man. Less Than Zero is a great song. Todd's Ship Gods, Above All Things. Again, that's in my upper numbers of their greatest songs. I love that song. Again, the phenomenal sound of the boats in the ocean, the lyrics, and again, he's talking about his father, who I guess worked in a shipyard. And again, if you're from Brooklyn, or you have family in Brooklyn, you can really appreciate it because it's so much closer to what you understand, especially if you've had family that worked in similar areas, of course. Great song, man. And again, the lyrics are phenomenal. I remember what you told me that time. Falling from my bike, scraping my knee. If you're going to cry, keep it from sunshine so no one sees. Oh, man. I like Goils. I hadn't heard that term Goils in so long until I saw it on here. Reminds me of Popeye Goyle's "A dish best served coldly." How could she? Again, very lengthy songs. 7 minutes 35 seconds, 7 minutes and 13 seconds. So the album kind of goes back and forth between that. "Life is Killing Me," phenomenal song. The lyrics are just absolutely phenomenal to that. Title to the album, "Nettie," which was about Peter's mother. Oh, what a good song that is. Um, yeah, he had a wonderful, he had a really nice relationship with his mom, which is always really nice to hear. Um, "We Were Electrocute," which you can hear in Freddy vs. Jason, that scene where the gentleman is in the bathtub and about to fall asleep. Great, great song. Phenomenal song. I love the lyrics to that. After that is "If You Don't Kill Me, I'm Gonna Kill You," which is kind of on the album. It's just IYDKMIGTHTKY, or known as "Gimme That." Great, great song. "Angry Inch," another cover, right? Is that from Hedwig and the, I forgot the name of the famous Broadway play. Hilarious song. Um, Again, them covering another band's work, making it their own. "Anesthesia." Ah, you talk about great songs, man. That's one that is so underrated. Has great lyrics in it. Oh my god, I'm drawing a blank right now with the lyrics, but oh god, what a really good song. I believe I heard them perform that live maybe once or twice, and it was phenomenal. Uh, "Drunk in Paris" is a really cool little musical interlude. And "The Dream Is Dead." That I think that's one of my most favorite songs off that album. I love the lyrics to that. "Champagne glass of blood and wine, on chocolate hearts alone I dine." And I believe that song was written about his dad passing away, which was really unfortunate. He had a really nice relationship with his dad as well. Um, "Another lonely Valentine's Day. I can't believe that things turned out this way." Oh man. Again, I think this is an underrated album. I really do. I mean, commercially, people will always say, well, "Bloody Kisses" and "Octoberrust." I understand that, but these two I think were so good. Maybe it was because they were deep, maybe it was because they were heavy, but they are phenomenal songs. Especially the lyrics and the music value. I mean, again, I can't say enough things about how good they were musically. They were so tight, man. I had a buddy, Tom. I have a buddy. I haven't seen him in so long. Who was, I believe, worked in accounting for Roadrunner Records. And one night he said to me, "Hey, man, I know you're a huge Type O Negative fan. How would you like to go see them rehearse?" I thought he was fucking with me. Um, but anyway, we went down to Rockaway, and they were rehearsing in like a little studio underneath this. I think it was this Asian supermarket or something like that. And we went in through the back, and literally, I thought he was messing around with me. And he looked at me right before we entered and said, "Do me a favor, because I know you're a big fan." He goes, "But don't fan out here. Don't do the whole fanboy." I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, cool, I'm good." And Go into the room, little tiny room, and I you hear them tuning instruments. We walk in, and there's Peter, there's Kenny, there's Johnny, and there's Josh, and they're just jamming as they were about to go on tour. So the fanboy in me was like, I felt like my socks, I was being electrocuted at my feet. I wanted to jump out of my shoes, but I tried to hold it back as best I could, and I tried to play it really cool. And we didn't stay too long. My friend Tom just kind of turned to me and goes, "All right, we got to go now." And I was kind of going, "Why? Why we got to leave, man?" And they were all super, super friendly, man. That's another cool thing. I had the privilege to meet them, actually. I think that time and two other times they were at Duff's when it was over in Brooklyn at the original site, I believe, and they were doing a meet and greet at the time, and I met Josh, Peter, Kenny, and Johnny, and they were all super friendly. Couldn't have been any friendlier, man. It was the first time I actually saw Peter in person. My ex-girlfriend and good friend Melanie had pointed him out because we were looking for him because we hadn't seen him there. I don't know how we couldn't see him. The guy was like, what, 6'7"? And she goes, there he is. And he's coming out of the bathroom, and there's a 6'7" guy walking towards me. And as he got closer, your head starts to tilt up like, holy shit. And I was like speechless. And she actually had to ask him, can he take a picture with you? And he looked over at me because I was kind of like, But then the third time we met them was at when they had given away the Deadagain album. It had the red cover, and it had the hidden tracks on it. Again, super, super nice, like always. Was able to meet Johnny. We actually did shots together. I think it was me, him, and Frank Ferry, which was awesome. He was super personable, super friendly. Um, all of them phenomenal guys, man. Really down to earth and really cool. Yeah, what a cool scene that bar was too. That bar was badass, man. Try and think. Yeah, that was the third time that I had met and seen him. Thank God. But yeah, I had seen him just I guess tuning up for a tour because my friend Tom ended up telling me that they're going on tour, so they're kind of fine tuning their things, and I ended up going to see them on that tour. They were at the oh God, another concert venue. This had to be back in 2012 or something like that. No, 2012. What am I saying? No, definitely not 2012. I forgot when it was exactly. Um, I don't remember when it was. I forgot where it was and where it was at. It was at a new venue in the city at the time. But yeah, um, getting back to this album, man. This is again phenomenal, phenomenal album, and sales wise, 39 on the Billboard 200. Sold over in Europe. They were always huge in Europe, which was amazing. And sometimes you'll find bands that are so big in Europe that may not be that big here, or vice versa. But this sold well, of course. And again, I don't know the numbers per se. I'm just going by from a lot of the information I'm seeing, and they got a lot of good ratings on their music. So, true hardcore. I want to say critics can always appreciate good stuff, regardless of the artist that it's coming from. So my hat off to those people who really know their stuff and who rated these albums high because it was well due. Their last album, of course, did again that real eerie looking picture of Rasputin on the cover, and this was excuse me, it was released through the label SPV Records, I believe, and was their first time doing it. It was their seventh studio album, and of course, you know, after this, of course, came Peter's unfortunate death, which was horrible, man. Released in March of 2007, and again, uh, phenomenal songs all around. Dead Again was the main song off there right away. My cat meowing, going nuts. Um, and I believed that song had to do with going in and out of drug addiction, which is very interesting. Or I believe I had read that somewhere. Tripping a Blind Man is a phenomenal song. Again, a 7-minute song, speeds up, goes faster. Great, great lyrics, man. I love the way they all sang in harmony on that. Prophet of Doom is badass. 10 minutes, 47 seconds. And what's he singing about in that? This they call a Huffus, the comet that's supposed to hit the Earth in April 2029, the final time. You want to laugh? I looked that up. That's a real thing. I don't know if it's going to hit Earth, but that supposedly is a comet that could possibly hit the planet. Just a phenomenal song, though. September Sun. Listen, we opened the show with that song. I got to tell you, man, that song holds a special place. Especially that beginning. What a cool video too. On top of the, I don't know what they're on, like a storefront or an apartment or something like that. Man, phenomenal, phenomenal song. Again, like I said before, I didn't even know that was them it didn't even sound like that. I remember listening to that in my car saying, that does not sound like Typo Negative. That's like, wow. I never heard them go like that route. And then, it gets heavy, and then it ends, Kenny kind of me, I know why. Oh man. Loved his vocals, man. His vocals were kick-ass. Halloween in Heaven, my favorite song off the album by far. How can you listen? He mentions everyone in that. And I know that song was all about Dimebag Darrell from Pantera, who they were very close with, the unfortunate death of him. Another great guitarist, but they had that wonderful. What does he say in that? Elvis ain't dead, so he isn't here. Party never ends. And then, of course, before that, he mentions all the great musicians. What does he say? Bon Scott on Vogue, Rhodes Just for Kicks, on guitar Hendrix. Oh, I love that. Um, then you have that woman. I forgot who the singer, the female singer was in that. On that, who comes in. Oh, Tara Von Flower. Great voice, man. Great voice. The way she comes in and sings that whole little piece. Of course, I cried when I heard they died. Oh, what a song, man. These three things, like I said before, 14 minutes long, man. 14 fucking minutes long. When you think about a song being that long, that'd be absolutely kick-ass to create, or so hard to do, to just lyrically, to just make that come to life in the studio and make it, then to edit it 14 minutes. I mean, holy shit, what a great song. She Burned Me Down's a great song. Some Stupid Tomorrow, I love that song. An Ode to Locksmith's one of my favorites. Again, that'll always be one of my go-tos. Great lyrics. Does it begin with him screaming, "Where the fuck are my keys?" I love that. That's so good. Hail and Farewell to Britain is amazing. The ending, when you hear the planes dropping the bombs and the machine guns and him screaming. What an album. And again, rating wise, they scored really high. The experts, or the so-called experts, really rated this album high. Number wise, at 27 on the US Billboard 200. And again, all over the charts in all the different countries: Austria, Belgium, Danish, Dutch, Finnish, French, German, Norway, Sweden, all over the place. Um, Listen, man, their catalog was absolutely kick-ass. And then, of course, they had those other couple of albums, The Least Worst Of, which off that album you had songs that were never heard before. It's Never Enough, which is a great song. That was actually unreleased from the World Coming Down album. 12 Black Rainbows, which was from the European single Everything Dies, which was also from the recording sessions of World Coming Down. And I believe that was it. Stay Out of My Dreams, which also never made it to the World Coming Down album. Imagine that. Those three songs would have been on the World Coming Down album. Only would have added more to it to make it wonderful. But yeah, Least Worst Of was great, primarily for those three songs. And of course, they released those two cool DVDs that were really good, After Dark and Symphony for the Devil, which are really good, primarily for the fans, because they have some hysterical interviews. They have some, a lot of behind the scenes stuff. So it's very cool, very funny. It's like I said, it's always a shame when a band is not together no more. Someone dies, unfortunately, and they're not, the core is not there anymore. Of course, we have bands such as Stone Temple Pilots and Alice in Chains that have gone on with different singers, and kudos to them. If that's kudos to the fans who love them. Me personally, I don't really follow them as much, and maybe I'm missing out. I'm sure I am, and I'm sure they put out a lot of good stuff, and I am not opposed to listening to them, but sometimes it's just very hard because of so much of what I was used to, was Scott Weiland, and of course was the great Lane Staley and the sound they had created. It would be extremely hard and difficult, and for Typo Negative to go on without Peter. I had read something today on an interview that it was really cool. I don't know which members of the band had said it, but they were saying if there ever was some type of regrouping or whatever, they would like a female to be the lead singer, which I think would be absolutely kick ass. And they felt that Peter would get an absolute kick out of it. And when I say it is impossible for them to go on without Peter, I just basically mean that, they were all one musical unit, and losing a part of that is extremely hard to do. Listen, they've, other than Josh, Kenny and Johnny have gone on to just do phenomenal things in music. I mean, like they're always, Johnny especially, he's everywhere, man. I see him drumming for so many different bands. It's amazing. Again, really talented guy, really great drummer, and it was a very, very nice guy when I had the pleasure of meeting them. But they had a Pale Horse Named Death, Silver Tomb, Seventh Void, and I believe Kenny was part of them as well. Um, whether he was lead singer or guitarist, he's part of Seventh Void, Silver Tomb as well. It's great stuff, man. They're always doing something. They were also touring with Danzig, I think, for a while, but they're still going. They're still great, man. I would love to see something more. I'd love to see them together again, man. I know Josh, I think, is kind of out of music. I think he was an EMT or something like that. Which is hey man, great for you. God bless. Why not? But yeah, it was an end of an era when Peter died and the band was no more. Like all great things, everything great has to come to an end. And again, man, they were their own in their own universe at this time. During the grunge era, during the alternative era, they stood on their own 2 feet, did their own thing as opposed to everything else, and were their own entity. That's something I've always appreciated about them. And they have such a wonderful following of fans, loyal fans to this day. I mean, there are so many different pages dedicated to whether it's Typo Negative or petersteele or the memories of them. It's great, man. It really is. They left us with a humongous, great catalog of work that will be around forever, thank God. And again, every time I think of Typo Negative, again, the first thing that comes to mind is always Brooklyn. And being from Brooklyn, being born there, being bred there, growing up to having family there, you appreciate everything so much more. Especially because you know that Peter was from there, they were from there, they played there for so long. So one of my favorite bands of all time, man. Like I said before, I every day or every time I'm listening to them, or especially in the full time around Halloween, I'll say the same thing to friends and the same thing to myself. It ain't the same without hearing Typo Negative, man. And on that note, I'm going to close out this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you are kind enough, please go to my YouTube page and subscribe. Give it a thumbs up. More great episodes to come for Give Me Back My 90s Music. You have been hanging with the Beast. Much love and respect to you. Have a wonderful day. Later.